Introduction. When I See the Wolf Ride, Book 1. From the Bible. Clothe yourselves with the full armor of God, so that you will be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. Ephesians 6:11. The Bible tells us God sent his angels to intervene in the lives of his chosen ones. The archangels Gabriel and Michael were ferocious spiritual warriors, sometimes imagined with huge, muscular bodies, messengers from God seen as guardians of Israel. In the 1970s, in the midst of battle during the Vietnam War, I served with an intense soldier, a rugged Indian we nicknamed Wolf. Waya Jones was strong, athletic, and cunning. During the quiet times between battles, this Native American from the Wolf Clan in southern Oklahoma revealed to me a story his father shared with him, the legend of the Cherokee Warrior. The Cherokee Warrior would usually appear first on the horizon, sometimes as a silhouette in a cloud. He rode a golden stallion and wore his own versions of spiritual armor. Like the angels in the Bible, the Cherokee Warrior was also a messenger. He would bring prophecies, warnings, and guidance. When necessary, he would intervene as a guardian of his people, a fierce champion who could defeat any enemy and even challenge the very source of all evil. My friend Wolf would not see the end of our time in Vietnam, but I have begun to actually witness the legend he described. The Cherokee Warrior rides the golden stallion, wearing his spiritual armor as well as the face of my fallen friend, Wolf. He warns me of a tremendous battle coming. He may be a vision, a dream, or even a figment of my vivid imagination. But to me, he is real. Our encounters leave me perplexed. I'm starving for answers, but it appears I shall have none, at least until the next time I see the wolf ride.
Welcome to the audio production of the novel When I See the Wolf Ride, Book 1, Chapter 1. Copyright 2024 by Jeffrey Lee Neal. Read by the author. And now, here is Chapter 1 of When I See the Wolf Ride, Book 1.
Chapter 1. Goodbye, Mom. Hello, Army. From the Bible. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? 1 Corinthians 15:55. Death. If it had a face, you wonder how that face would look. Would it be like something out of a horror film? A frightening countenance with horns and devilish features? A garish caricature of evil with grossly stained teeth, visible from a grinning visage that delights in knowing it will rob its victims of their most priceless possession, existence. Or would it be pale and lifeless, an emotionless mannequin that robotically steals whatever it is that makes us move, makes us feel, allows us to think, whatever separates us from death itself? Maybe it would be peaceful, no more pain. No more broken relationships, no more fighting, no more conflict, no more trouble, just silence, darkness, a quiet journey to the mysterious place a flame goes when the flame goes out. Or would it be ordinary? Nothing special, not beautiful, not ugly, just ordinary. Simply another face on another day, except that this face is the face of death. I wonder, because today, that face is my face. My name is Lee Dunham. It's March 15th, 1971. I'm standing at the edge of a small farming village in Vietnam. I am part of a U.S. Army unit under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Derek Bosner, a decorated West Point officer. He told us our mission was to feed these starving people. We've been at it for a couple of weeks, and it's been wonderful to see their faces as they get these supplies they desperately need. But now there is something different about the mood of the people in the camp. I've heard a lot of movement. I can see them all coming to the center of the village. As I make my way to the clearing, there are gasps and crying. Two of the men from my unit are on their knees with their hands behind their heads as prisoners. My sergeant is lying motionless on the ground. Lieutenant Colonel Derek Bosner and the others are lined up like a firing squad, their guns drawn. Each man has an Uzi, not the standard M1 carbines we use. They are yelling at these people, moving them into a tight group. A terrified child is crying.
Leave that kid with the others and come here, soldier.
I glance at the villagers.
Now!
I move to face Bosner, whose Uzi is now pointed at my chest.
Turn around.
I do. I'm now facing the terrified villagers.
Drop to one knee.
I do.
Draw your weapon.
I look back at him, confused. Sir? Bosner goes back to yelling.
These gooks are Viet Cong. The minute we leave here, they will inform the enemy of our whereabouts, as they have been doing for the last week. We will put an end to that right now. Your sergeant and those other two men seem to have a problem obeying my orders. I need to know where you stand on obeying orders, soldier. You will start firing on the enemy. Now!
The enemy, terrified villagers, are studying my face, the face that will be responsible for their deaths. The face of death now belongs to me, and everyone here knows it. I look back at Bosner so I can see his face. No, sir. They're not Viet Cong, and you know it. Bosner smiles, as if he had hoped I would say no. He aims the end of his Uzi at my temple.
You fire, or I will.
I put my weapon on the ground. Sir, if you are determined that one of us has to be a murderer today, it ain't gonna be me. He grins as I wait for the shot and the pain, preceded by the sound. After what seemed like an eternity, there it was. The deafening burst of the gunshot, the sickening sounds of flesh exploding, and the harrowing cries of the horrified crowd. How did my life ever bring me to this point? Was it fate, or was it choices? Did the military change me, or simply amplify all the things about me that would eventually bring me here? At what point in my life did I acquire the face of death? In the early 1970s, most of North Texas was made up of small towns whose skylines boasted large grain storage buildings, but little else. In Van Alstyne, we didn't even have that. We had the Gregg drugstore that somehow had survived through the years from its heyday in World War II. They still made those legendary fountain cokes and milkshakes, as well as BLT sandwiches, even keys when you needed one. I heard they had drugs too, but the pharmacy there was always out of whatever my mom needed. We'd drive up to Sherman for that. Sherman was about 6 times the size of Van Alstyne. They had a Gibson's Discount City with a great big pharmacy, as well as a bowling alley and the historic Texas movie theater. I never knew why it was so historic. Maybe Bonnie and Clyde watched the Three Stooges there. Or maybe historic was a nicer word for old. Sherman also had a radiology lab. That's where Mom got her chemotherapy treatments. To me, Sherman was the big city. Van Alstyne had a tiny high school, a few small churches, and a cemetery across the railroad tracks that took up more acreage than all of the town's buildings combined. It was a lifeless little town filled with old people and dying people like Mom. Mr. Blessing, the town's funeral director, had the most successful business in Van Alstyne. Nobody's really named that. I always thought he made up that name so he'd get more business from grieving relatives of dead people. He seemed to me an ancient character, a relic of all those funerals he oversaw, a mysterious chameleon dressed in the same pitch-black suit every Sunday, greeting us with that long-drawn face, sporting a superficial professional smile. He would ask Mom how she was feeling, and then shake my hand, as if to grant me a small moment of mutual respect that we both knew I was much too young to deserve. Maybe it was because he knew he'd be getting my business soon. Mom felt it was vital I attend church with her, even though neither of us had much use for the parishioners there, who dropped out of their normal routines to assume new personalities on Sunday. The old man who cussed me when I ran into his fence with my bike a couple of years ago now blessed me. The banker, who wouldn't give us credit, gave us his best wishes. The old ladies that gossiped about Mom smiled sweetly. Sunday clothes covered up ugly attitudes as well as ugly bodies, but we kept going. Mom hoped there was something about choir members singing out of tune and a boring preacher droning on forever about nothing that might make me a better person. Or maybe it was because she knew she didn't have long, and that little church was the closest thing to God she could find. Mom had been widowed 3 years since we lost Dad to cancer in May of '65. Granddaddy had died of cancer in July of '64. Uncle Jimmy died of cancer in June of '63. They were all heavy smokers, proud residents of Marlboro country, who poo-pooed any suggestion that there might be something to their doctor's warnings about their favorite habit. So they created a new family tradition in which the rest of us would observe one of them suffering an agonizing death every summer. Now, it was Mom's turn. I was working at the Sherman Democrat newspaper in distribution. That meant we came at midnight on Saturday, stuffed the Sunday edition with ads in Parade magazine all night, and then threw the routes they didn't have paper boys for on Sunday morning before dressing for church. But there would be no church for me today. At the ripe old age of 18 and just out of high school, they escorted me into Mom's hospital room to see her on her back, eyes wide open, her body motionless. They lost her 10 minutes before I could get there from my paper route. Although the nurses wanted to console me, I didn't respond to them. I felt no grief. I felt nothing. It was as if all of my emotions had died with Mom. People were explaining to me they would have to move her body. They called Mr. Blessing. A hospital accounting person showed up with papers that listed what insurance would not pay, and a nice lady in pink gathered up Mom's things in a bag. Later that afternoon, after staring for a while at the lunch I didn't eat, Mr. Blessing sported his most professional smile and invited me into his office. As he closed the door behind him, the smile and any sympathy he had for my situation evaporated like smoke.
"Son, do you have any next of kin that you can call to help you?"
We both knew I didn't. "No, sir, they all died of cancer like she did."
"Well, son, you're going to have to pay for this funeral, and I don't do credit. What are you going to do?"
I don't know what Mr. Blessing was expecting from me, but whatever it was, I believe what I did next was a real surprise for him. I took a folded letter out of my pocket and handed it to him. It was a tumultuous time in American history. The Vietnam War was raging. Many people, especially young people, hated the war. There were anti-war marches, anti-war protests, and anti-war comedy routines by the Smothers Brothers on their CBS Sunday night TV show. There was also the U.S. draft, which conscripted young men my age into military service. Since most of us didn't want to go, to make things fair, the government had created a lottery system that would assign each eligible male a number. The higher your number, the less likely you were to have to go. I knew guys with numbers like 186, 223, and even higher. Mr. Blessing's expression changed when he read the letter he was holding. My number was 12. "It seems like what I'm going to do is go in the Army, sir." For the first time, Mr. Blessing smiled. Not that fake one, but a genuine smile that he would display to someone he liked. Mr. Blessing had served in World War II. He had fond memories of friends he made and adventures he experienced. Now, he seemed to have a newfound respect for me. In the next hour, this savvy businessman worked out a plan in which a real estate friend would sell Mom's house. The church would auction off the furniture, and Mr. Blessing would take what I owed him. The rest would be put in my bank account to pay off the other bills. Although he had no desire to help some dumb kid, he felt he had a responsibility to help a fellow soldier. By the time they released me from Mr. Blessing's office, the day was done. So was I. Although Van Alstyne didn't have much to it, the sunsets there were among the most beautiful I have experienced in all the places I have traveled. It occurred to me that I would only have 3 more days of these sunsets before I had to report for military service. After all these years, there was something in Van Alstyne I would miss. I couldn't stop thinking about Mom. I wondered what death was like. I had read near-death stories about people who went through tunnels, saw bright lights, even saw heaven, and then came back. I didn't believe death was the end of existence. I felt like there was an afterlife and a God somewhere. Most of the people in church that seemed closest to God were the hardest for me to tolerate. I figured that was because I was a bad person. Not that it mattered. Most guys didn't come back from Nam anyway. There's a special exhaustion you get on the day you lose a parent. It troubled me in ways I couldn't describe, even more than when Dad died. I fell head first into the pillow on the bed. I don't know how long I'd been asleep when I started dreaming or something. I found myself in a large room full of people. They were having a party. Everyone was wearing those cheesy little party hats, blowing those noisy, annoying party favor things that roll out and then back. The people that noticed me smiled. I didn't recognize anyone in the room. I remember wondering what I was doing there. Then the crowd parted like the Red Sea before Moses, and Mom came down the aisle formed by these party animals, walking right up to me as if nothing had happened. She was wearing her own cheesy little hat and had one of those noisy, annoying party favor things in her hand. This was more than a shock. To be honest, it made me mad. I was exhausted from grieving all day and she's having a party. I wanted to say, "Mother, stop that. You're dead." But I heard myself saying, "Mother? Oh, Lee baby." I knew it had to be her because nobody else had ever called me Lee baby, not even girlfriends. "Lee baby, today I've seen people I have not seen in years. Years." I didn't understand where or what this was, but I sensed I didn't have long with her, so I blurted out the most important question I could think of. "Have you seen Dad?" She smiled as if this was no big deal. "Oh, I haven't even seen him yet." That bothered me. Did that mean he didn't make it to heaven? Or did it mean he was there, but she hadn't found him yet? That was her husband. Why wouldn't she go find him first when she got there? Then again, she had all eternity. I guess if he was there, she'd get around to him. But why wouldn't he come see me too? Her face turned serious, and she came closer to me. "I just wanted you to know that I'm all right." And then there I was, sitting up in my bed, all alone, in a dark, quiet room. I laid right back down, trying to go to sleep, to get back to that place, to ask more questions. But now I was wide awake. It was gone. And so was Mom. The next day, everything seemed dark. I remember sitting back in my chair as the women from church walked through the house, marking things to sell. I couldn't stop thinking about Mom. It would be very much like my mother to come back to tell me she was all right. That it was okay to stop worrying about her now and go live my life. But what was that? Was it heaven? I didn't remember any pearly gates or gold. Was it just a dream? It was so real. Yet it was so unimpressive. The heaven our preacher droned on and on about should blow you away. All I remember noticing were people, and then Mom. At this moment, I felt something I had never felt before. An incredible happiness. I'd never been this happy, ever. Not when I got that bike at Christmas my parents told me Santa couldn't afford. Not when I hit the winning home run in Little League. Not even when Mary Lou Barnes kissed me on the mouth under the bleachers behind the baseball field. I was 7, so you can imagine. Never had I felt like this. It was so powerful, I had to smile. It was as if someone had taken their fingers, put them into my face, and forced my mouth to form a smile. I couldn't stop it. It felt better than alcohol, pot, or even sex. There was nothing that has ever made me feel this good before or since. Nothing. When I considered it later in my life, I remembered I had been thinking about that dream and how unremarkable Mom's room in heaven seemed to be. That was the moment it overwhelmed me. I thought maybe God cracked open the door to heaven at that very moment to let me have a whiff. It was like that feeling you get in summer in Texas when you've been out in 104-degree heat for hours. You come into an air-conditioned room, and when the door first opens, you feel that rush of cool air that makes all the difference against your sweaty face. It was like that, except instead of cool air on a hot day, it was joy. Overwhelming joy. Maybe heaven was about the people you share it with instead of pearly stuff and golden stuff. I liked that idea. And that moment would be the basis of any faith I had in God for the next few years. On the day of Mom's funeral, it was as if I was somewhere else. Whatever was left of her in that open coffin didn't resemble my mom. The smiling country preacher raved how wonderful it was she had gone to heaven. We should all rejoice. Let him rejoice. The preacher spoke directly to me from his pulpit, admonishing me that I should go to the cross for comfort. I kept my opinion of where he should go to myself. The joy I felt the day before was now all gone. An emptiness almost as great had replaced it. When you cease to care about anything, moments, people, and events all blend. So my mother's funeral became a blurry montage of images I had no desire to recall, save one. As I rode in the hearse on the way to the cemetery, I looked out at the trees in the countryside to see small foggy clouds clustered among them, with the colors of the sun creating stunning rays of light shaped into the figures of long-departed souls who seemed to be there for this occasion. In all my years in Van Alstyne, I had never seen them look like that. It was as if Mom had sent them to say goodbye. Bye, Mom. Hello, Army.
That concludes Chapter 1. We invite you next to read the PDF or listen to Chapter 2, entitled Rage Takes Hold of Me. We also invite you to listen to our podcast for Chapter 1, in which Michele Jaco talks with Jeff Neal about the story, the characters, and the symbolic elements within the chapter. Music for this production was licensed from the Smart Sound collection, and cover art was created from Adobe stock images. Some voice work was enhanced by AI technology from 11 Labs.